Atlantic Ocean was a vast, iron-blue mirror under the heat of an unseasonably warm autumn sun. The SS Faraday lay motionless directly above the coordinates decoded in London, positioned over an uncharted region of the mid-Atlantic where the seabed dropped away into the absolute dark of the Atlantic abyss. Her steam winches hissed and spat white vapor as they held the immense weight of a completely different kind of cable, one that did not run laterally to any shore, but disappeared straight down into the vertical desert beneath the keel. On her main deck stood the Aegis. It was a massive 3-ton sphere of cast bronze and heavily riveted copper. Its thick, curved walls designed specifically to withstand the unimaginable, crushing weight of over 5,000 fathoms of ocean. Inside this cramped, cold copper womb, Arthur sat knee to knee with Harrison, a veteran commercial diver whose face had been weathered by the salt and wind of every sea on Earth. The heavy iron hatch was swung shut. The massive locking bolts were tightened from the outside with heavy steel wrenches, and with a low, agonizing metal groan, the sphere was lifted from the deck by the main crane and dropped into the sea. The transition from the familiar world of light and air to the alien world of water was sudden, violent, and absolute. Through the thick, conical glass of the single forward viewing port, Arthur watched the white foam of the surface recede rapidly, replaced by a deep, luminous green that grew steadily darker and heavier with every fathom they descended. For the first 1,000 feet, the ocean was vibrantly alive with color flashes of sapphire, silver, and gold as schools of pelagic fish darted past their windows, fleeing the shadow of the descending bronze sphere. But by the time they passed 3,000 feet, the lively green had faded into a cold, sterile indigo blue, and then into a dark, suffocating violet. The sun, which had warmed the wooden decks of the Faraday just minutes before, was now only a memory, a faint, gray smudge of light that disappeared entirely as they sank past the twilight zone and into the midnight depths. "Faraday," Arthur said, his voice echoing flatly and metallic against the curved bronze walls of the sphere. He held the cold copper mouthpiece of the telephone, a thin, fragile wire wrapped securely around their main steel suspension cable, connecting them to the surface. "We have passed the 3-mile mark. The temperature is dropping rapidly. The interior walls are cold to the touch, and condensation is pooling." "Understood, Aegis," Lord Kelvin's voice came back through the crude earpiece. The old physicist sounded thin and distorted by the immense static of the line, like a voice speaking through a mile-long metal tube. "Keep your eyes on the internal galvanometer, Arthur. The deep current is running strong in your sector. Watch your pressure gauges. Do not exceed the red line." The air inside the sphere was growing thick, damp, and foul. The moisture from their breath condensed instantly on the freezing bronze walls, trickling down in rivulets to form a small, icy pool in the bilge beneath their heavy boots. A single, low-voltage electric lamp cast a harsh yellow glare over their limited instruments, a mechanical pressure gauge that was slowly, terrifyingly climbing toward 3 tons per square inch, and a small mirror galvanometer that continued its rhythmic green dance on the bulkhead, fed by a secondary wire they had spooled down with them. Every few hundred feet, Harrison would reach out and turn the brass valve on the oxygen canister, releasing a sharp, hissing breath of chemical air that smelled strongly of copper, salt, and ozone. They were suspended by a single, braided steel wire in a vertical desert of water that was over 5 miles deep, isolated from the rest of humanity by a distance that was vertical rather than horizontal, a direction we were never meant to travel. At 23,000 feet, the sphere finally came to a gentle, bouncing rest on the seabed, kicking up a massive cloud of pale, silty clay. Harrison threw a heavy breaker switch, and the primary searchlight on the Aegis's underbelly flickered to life, cutting a narrow, intense cone of brilliant white light through the dark water. As the silt slowly settled, what they saw through the glass was not the flat, featureless plain of mud and dead marine snow they had fully expected. The searchlight revealed a sprawling forest of colossal basalt pillars. They were massive, 5-sided columns of perfectly black stone that rose from the clay like the shattered ruins of a giant's temple. They were incredibly geometric, precise, and arranged in massive concentric rings that stretched out far into the darkness beyond the reach of their light. And draped directly over the central ring of columns was the thick, gutta-percha-wrapped copper core of their own transatlantic telegraph cable. It had not been dropped there by chance, nor had it drifted there on the deep currents. The cable, which the Faraday had laid across the ocean floor months ago, had been physically gathered up from the seabed. It had been laid carefully, with architectural precision, across the flat tops of the basalt pillars, held firmly in place by massive, dark bronze clamps that had been bolted deep into the stone by some machine that had left wide, circular bore scars in the rock. "Harrison," Arthur whispered, his breath completely fogging the cold glass of the viewing port. He wiped it away frantically with his sleeve. "Look at the central column." At the very heart of the basalt forest stood a monolithic pillar that was twice the size of the others. Its polished surface was carved with intricate, deeply recessed geometric grooves that ran from its base buried in the mud all the way up to a large, spherical cap of dark, oxidized bronze. The cap was connected directly to the transatlantic telegraph cable by a thick, cleanly severed copper lead. As they watched, breathless in the cold dark, the deep grooves in the stone began to glow. It was a soft, pulsing light, the eerie, haunting color of bioluminescent teal that flowed upward along the channels of the monument in a sequence that perfectly matched the galvanometer's dance on the Faraday's wall. The ancient stone was not merely holding the cable. It was feeding it. It was drawing immense electrical energy directly from the Earth's own tectonic friction, pulling power from the mantle itself, and converting it into the rhythmic, slow scan signals that had traveled 5,000 miles up the wire to the test room in London. "It is the transmitter," Arthur said into the telephone, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and sheer terror. "We are standing directly before it, sir. The stone is carved. It is artificially constructed, and it is glowing. The glyphs on the surface, they are exactly matching the translation grids we drew in London." "Describe the glyphs, Arthur." Kelvin's voice came through the earpiece, now almost completely lost in a suddenly rising storm of electrical static. "Gartati. Static in the stone, or do they shift?" "They are moving, my lord," Arthur replied, his eyes fixed wide on the pulsing, hypnotic light. "They are flowing along the stone like water through a canal. The current is rising rapidly. The needle on the galvanometer is pegging at the absolute limit." Suddenly, the heavy bronze sphere groaned in protest. The water around them seemed to literally shiver, a low-frequency acoustic hum vibrating through the hole that set their teeth on edge and rattled the tools in the racks. The primary searchlight on the Aegis flickered wildly and then died completely with a sharp pop, leaving them in absolute darkness, save for the intense green-teal light that was now radiating fiercely from the monolith. The massive bronze cap of the monument flared with a brilliant, entirely silent discharge of electrical energy that traveled straight up the copper wire like a blinding pulse of green fire. Inside the sphere, the telephone receiver let out a sharp, ear-piercing metallic shriek that made Arthur cry out and drop the mouthpiece. And then, the line went dead. They were 5 miles below the surface of the Atlantic, trapped in a freezing bronze bubble in the absolute, crushing dark of the abyss. Staring out through the thick glass, Arthur watched the brilliant green light on the stone fade slowly back to a dim, resting pulse, leaving only the cold, silent basalt columns standing like eternal sentinels all around them. The main cable was still there, a thin copper thread connecting them to the ship and the sun above. But as Arthur looked out at the ancient, mechanical ruins that had waited patiently for us for millions of years, he knew with absolute certainty that the thread was no longer ours to control. We had built our vast networks to speak to ourselves, boasting of our mastery over the world. But the deep had simply reached up and taken our wires, and it was now using them to speak to the rest of the world. This was the descent into the trench. This was the terrifying moment we touched the machine. This was the abyssal descent,